Ryan or Cliff?
Ashley, you can go first. How's that?
I can go first. Am I just introducing myself? So hi, for everybody that I don't know yet. I'm Ashley Todd-Diaz. So I am the Assistant University Librarian for Special Collections and University Archives. Very long title. And I work at Towson University during the day. And then I have been an adjunct with SLIM since 2013. And I don't have my MLS from SLIM, but I received my PhD from SLIM in 2019.
Should I go next?
Alphabetically, you're next.
Yeah, any burning questions for Ashley before I say anything? So I'm Cliff Hight, and kind of like Ashley, my day job is head of special collections at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. Before I've done that for the last few years. Before that, I was the university archivist here for a while as well. So I've been at K-State for about 11-ish, a little over 11 years now. Ashley and I are both graduates of the University at Albany program, so we have that in common as well as both of us working in Kansas at one time. So that was kind of a fun connection. And the course that I have taught in the program has been the 848 digitization class. It has a different name than that, but that's the short version. And I taught that for a few years. This coming summer, we've transitioned to Irina Rogova is going to be teaching it. And that's because she does that type of work for her job and I don't. So it made more sense for her to be the instructor on that. And so I've been working with WUSOB to create a new one credit, back-to-back one credit classes in Appraisal. So that's going to be an option in the fall. So those are kind of the connections that I have with the program, and look forward to further conversations with you all today.
I am a Ryan Leimkuehler. Just think about killing limes and you have my last name. But I am the university records manager and I work under Cliff. And I teach the records management course. So if I'll just do a quick pitch here for those of you that may be thinking it over. Records management is kind of the other half to archives work. And so I deal a lot with the living documents as they're being created and making sure that they survive long enough to get to the archives. And so any archivist is going to have to play in kind of both fields, or at least know, hey, I need to talk to these people and get stuff into the archives. I graduated from Emporia State in 2017, somewhere in that range. I'm starting to lose count now. And I am a recovering teacher, so teaching is very close to my heart. And so I enjoy it, I love it, and that's why I want to be here, is to interact with students in any way possible. And happy to kind of share my experience. It's been a long, winding road from teacher to archivist to records manager. So happy to share any step along the way. But that's my 2 cents.
So just for your information, Ashley was ESU archivist for a while. I don't know how many years, 6 years?
Just about 4 years.
Okay. And then Ryan was working at the Kansas Historical Society, right? Archives.
Yep. I was their government records archivist. Yep.
And I remember visiting there. And then, do you know the most frequently visited collection of the state archives? What would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. We have a lot of requests for senator papers. So any various senator, I would say our political collection is the most requested. We do have a lot of stuff with Brown versus Board of Education. We have some stuff in there as well. And then the Miniger collection, which was a state-run hospital in Topeka. I think that those are kind of the big ticket items from the Historical Society.
But that was not my answer. My answer was actually prison records.
Oh, yeah, yes. Yeah, you can ask for them, you just never get to see them.
Yeah, so because, I mean, I heard that the reason was that was the only record with their ancestors' photo for a long time. That makes sense to me.
And yeah, I do recall us getting requests for mugshots from long dead relatives from those collections.
So, okay, that probably is not a main point of this, conversation. But again, I believe many of you have many questions about this area. It's honestly, as dean of school, I don't know how and what is required to be a archivist or record manager, or the record manager or archives are not only at universities or government agencies. It's all over the places. That what is the Hallmark? Hallmark has archives. It's very specialized, but they have archives, and all the corporations have their archives. Like a Coca-Cola, that would be your dream job, I believe. So again, feel free to ask any questions, and then from class selections to future job prospects in the field, and then they will be honest in their answers.
Well, hello, my name is Leslie, and I'm a current teacher. I actually teach little guys elementary. I'm the library teacher there. So my master's is in education, not library science, but I'm looking to get my master's in library science and maybe moving away from teaching the little ones into a different area. And archives has always sounded really fascinating.
JFK. Well, it's a little more complicated. It's a little more complicated.
So I was just curious, what I hear archivist, but what exactly do you do? What exactly does that job entail?
Okay, I'll go first again. A little bit of everything. I would say you can consider the archive. So all of us have experience within academic archives, and I worked in a museum archives for a while, and I did some internships in government archives as well, and historical society archives. But coming from an academic standpoint, where the archives is usually located within the library, you can kind of think of the archives as a mini library. So we are bringing material in, we're processing that material, getting it ready for patrons. We're answering reference requests. We are working with donors. We are bringing classes or community groups in to learn about the materials that we have. Putting on programming, and trying to better represent, in many cases, the history of our institution, and identify where gaps might exist, reach out to people that might be able to help us fill in those gaps, to have a more transparent and honest sense of the history of our institution or a particular collecting area. So there's a little bit of a lot of things that in my opinion, makes the days go by quickly. And I always feel like I have way more to do than there seems to be time for in the day.
Yeah, I guess I'll just jump in from my government archives because I'm sure Cliff is going to pull from K-State as well. But I think the background of a teacher, just speaking to you directly, is that it's such a great tool for you to use because, and just to dispel this for other people, like being an archivist isn't sitting in the back of a dusty room. Those jobs, I think, are becoming far and far rarer. And you actually do have to go out and talk to people, learn about people. So really being empathetic and going and talking to people and listening to their stories is one of the best parts. And working for the state archives, I got to see that for all government agencies, you know, all the way down to the Board of Barbering, all the way up to the Attorney General's office. And just seeing kind of the different approaches each agency is trying to do, what they're trying to do, helping them navigate the field of what do we need to keep, what do you want? So again, another area that I like to dispel is that we don't take everything. A lot of what we do is saying, yes, we want this. No, we can't take this other thing. Maybe not because it's not interesting, but maybe it's one of multiple copies. It might be, you know, something where, sorry, we just don't have the resources for that. We don't have the staff to process that collection. And so kind of cutting it down to a point that is digestible by whatever size of organization you're at. But that's a lot of it too, is kind of balancing act of what can we take. You know, Born Digital, that's a whole different can of worms just to open up. But, you know, if you're wanting to get your hands dirty and dusty, you know, a lot of stuff that we're getting now is electronic and starting to figure out, yes, we're keeping all of this physical stuff. We have all this really cool digital stuff too that is getting lost, or maybe we haven't figured out a way to pipeline it into an archive. So that's kind of the stuff that I get excited about, is kind of the frontier aspect of archives as well, kind of blazing that new trail for Born Digital stuff. And I'll pitch it over to Cliff.
I don't know if I have much more to add from what the two of you have already said, because I think you covered it pretty well. I know one aspect that it's not just because I'm teaching a class soon on this, but I think a lot about appraisal, because that really is an important part of the work that we do, because what we're thinking about is the value that this documentation has, and how can we determine value, and how can we communicate why it's valuable? How can we communicate to our successors so in 20 years they know why we decided this group of records or this collection from this faculty member or this community member was important enough for us to retain it and expend the resources to preserve it and make it accessible. That's to me some of the most important decisions that we can make. And because I've had experiences not having that documentation to explain why they've retained things they've retained, I'm a little bit more on the edge of, hey, let's make sure we at least communicate some reason behind why we kept this stuff. So I think I'll add, outside of some of the other things that they've talked about, archives exist in a lot of different groups, and there are growing developments in what's called community archives, which sometimes it's not bound to an institution. It might be a group of people in your town who are really committed to a certain aspect of history or documenting things that have happened in their community. And they say, hey, we need to preserve this documentation somehow. And so it may fall outside of an institutional setting entirely. So that's another interesting aspect of archives that's been developing. So, all right, I think I'll stop there. Leslie, did all of that give you way more than you ever wanted to know about archives?
Oh, no, it's great. Give me more. Give me more. No, thank you.
Please jump in. You know, one of the challenges, the space is limited. So how can you say no? Right? Actually, if for example, the retired professor unfortunately passed away, and their family members. All this must be good for the history of your institution. So please take this and preserve them forever. And then you don't say you don't have any space and any resources to process. How can you say no? I'm asking.
I'll jump in.
What is the decision process, whether you take or not?
Yeah, I'll jump into this just because this is the main function of my job here at K-State, is really having conversations with offices and developing retention and disposition schedules so that we have a schedule online that says, hey, for these types of records, maybe it's course content records or course assessment records, we have a plan in place that says we keep these for 5 years and then destroy, or 10 years and then transfer to archives. And through that, we also show, what restrictions are on those records. Is it FERPA related? Is it HIPAA related? Is there other kinds of restrictions on these records before they're even come to Cliff's, hopefully before it comes into Cliff's inbox, they already know kind of what are we sending to the archives and what are they not. But also, since I've only been the records manager here for about 4.5 years, we're still trying to put together what that retention schedule looks like. But it's getting easier and better to have that tool to basically say, before I have to be the bad guy in the room, I can say, oh, look at your retention schedule, and then we can go from there. But other ways, I'm fine with being the bad guy as well, coming in and saying, hey, I recognize you've been here 30 years. I recognize that you're retiring, but unfortunately we can't take those 15 file cabinets that you have in your office. We just can't do it. But maybe we can purge that down to maybe one, and just having those types of conversations, not making a personal jab, just saying we all have a budget. But I'm sure Ashley and Cliff have other approaches.
Sure. So the question comes up every once in a while, particularly as people are cleaning out their parents' homes or relatives' homes, and they realize, oh, we have all of Aunt Sue's materials from when she was a professor at Towson University. And often, one of the things to remember, as Ryan mentioned, building relationships and actually, seeing people as people when they're coming to the archives to convey, or to talk with you about materials, that those things that they're looking to donate likely have a lot of sentimental value to them or personal value that might not translate into research value for the archives, right? So navigating personal relationships, but also, yes, Melissa, Towson, Maryland, so just north of Baltimore. But also recognizing that maybe Aunt Sue was a great scholar of pottery, and perhaps down the road is a really fabulous institution that she didn't teach at, but they have a collecting area in historic pottery. And hey, wouldn't those materials better serve the researchers who are already coming to that institution to see the other 16 collections they have about pottery? And yes, even though this was her, scholarly home for 40 years, we only, this would be our only collection in that area. And so it really wouldn't do it justice to have it kind of on an island by itself. And researchers would, really appreciate having everything in one location, which comes down to ethics, right? That, an archives typically has institutional records, but then also maybe a few collecting areas. So Towson has, for example, a collecting area in World War II. So, if somebody came to us about pottery, we would help them find another institution that the collection would be better suited for.
But if it's World War II pottery, then she's
World War II pottery,
it.
yes. Then we would find the space.
And I'll just add a little bit to what both of them have said. And some of the ways that we do this, it's not just by magically picking these topics out of out of thin air and then deciding this is what we're going to do. We often have what's called either a collection development policy or an acquisition policy, something like that, similar to what you may see in a library environment, where we kind of outline our rationale and our criteria for acquiring collections of various sorts. And that's the process that we've gone through at Kansas State University. And we've worked with, like Ryan's work on the records management side helps inform what university records come into the archives. And so those are different ways that we can do that. And we have other collecting areas where we kind of scope out, all right, do we focus, like one of ours is Kansas life and culture, which can be really wide. We also know that we've got at least a handful of other institutions in the state that collect other things related to Kansas. And so it's navigating which aspects do we really want to focus on so that we're not competing with other repositories. And kind of like Ashley was saying, if somebody comes to us and they say, oh, we have this really great collection, but it falls outside of our normal areas, then we can kind of direct them to other repositories that are more appropriate. And that's just good stewardship. It's good use of resources. It's, those are just normal practices that we try and do. So other questions that folks have?
I have a quick question. Cliff, you were talking about the collection policy that you have. Do you update that off and on, or how does that work?
That's a wonderful question. We drafted that, it was like 2015 or 16 when we did it. And the commitment that we had internally was like every couple of years, we'd look at it and see if it needed to be updated. Of course, we had, I don't know how many of you are aware, we had a fire in the roof of our library building in 2018. That kind of changed our priorities for a little while. And so this year we're hoping to revisit it, see if we need to scope it differently. But yeah, that's kind of normal practice to create the policy. And then if you are good at what you're doing and don't get distracted by, other things like disaster recovery and things, then you go back and you hit it every few years to go, yep, this is still where we want to focus. It's worded the way we want it. Nothing else has come up, so yeah, that's a good question though.
I have a quick question about backlogs. Do you have like collections that you look at and you're like, oh, this would be very valuable, we should jump this ahead of other collections that are maybe waiting to get described or arranged? I guess I'm curious what that process is like.
I'm happy to start that one off. We've gone through that process a little bit. Daly, it sounds like you've had some experience with archives if you're talking about backlogs and arrangement and description. I mean, you're using the key words there, so that's good. Yes, the way that we have tried to approach it, and obviously, like I mentioned with the disaster recovery work, that's kind of shifted how we think about things recently, but we're getting back into the groove of like more normal archival operations. And so a lot of times what we do is we try and get the right players at the table to have conversations about which collections are higher on the priority list to get processed. And if we have those meetings with some consistency, that gives us a chance to check in, and we may, as you noted, we may come across, oh wow, this thing has all these, like, I don't know, I can think of, we've got content that people have been asking about, but we weren't aware of it until we saw this box of stuff. Let's hurry and get it processed. So yeah, sometimes that can jump the line. Your priorities can adjust along the way. So yeah, that's pretty normal. It's not like it can change from institution to institution, but it's not like there's a first processed, set in stone type of an arrangement in most places. Ashley or Ryan, you got anything to add?
I'll add that, yeah, I mean, so your priorities might change if there's a class, say, where the professor approaches and says, hey, I'd really like to work with you next semester on this geography class that I'm planning. Do you have any material on urban development and the university, or something where perhaps you have this collection, it came in a while back, where perhaps it's institutional records that relate to the campus's development and relationship with the local city, or something that might be useful. And so perhaps that jumps it up the priority list. Sometimes size of a collection, say you have an intern and you have a neatly packaged group of materials that would be perfect for somebody to work on. And sometimes it's donor relations, that somebody is really interested to donate material to you, but they want to know that it's going to be addressed quickly. And so that might be part of the agreement that you work out with them, that you will dedicate X amount of time to making sure that something is at least minimally processed, right? There's at least an ability for researchers to understand what's there, and that it will be accessible more quickly.
Yeah, and just from my angle, working with offices, for an example, like if the registrar's office has a bunch of historic records that are, at risk or always being accessed, when I'm working with them and talking about these records in an appraisal report that I would submit to our processing person, probably go through Cliff as well. But I may say, hey, these records have been kept in a dingy vault for a while. They're deteriorating fast. Maybe we can streamline these to, because they're not going to get better, maybe because of their condition, we want to, and their value to the university, we may want to get that moved up the chain a little bit.
Can you tell us about the exam, certification or certified exam, what it's called exactly? I'm talking about this on the chat window. Certified archivist exam, is it necessary?
Oh, is it necessary? So as Cliff mentioned before, he and I went through the same program. We had the same mentor. And if you asked Dr. Phil Eppard, he would tell you, no, it's not necessary. It's actually a pretty big debate within the archival field as to whether or not becoming a certified archivist is necessary. And I mean, you'll notice if you look at job postings, many of them will say nothing about certification. Some of them will say it's maybe preferred. But depending on where you live, what state you live in, and if you're interested in, say, a government archivist position or a corporate archivist position, it might be more necessary to at least consider it. So it's also another community. So if you think about joining a professional organization like the Society of American Archivists or the American Library Association or the Kansas Library Association, right? It opens up a network for you of people that you can contact and draw on. It offers scholarship opportunities and additional resources that are beneficial. And on the job search, it doesn't hurt to have another qualification, right? Another achievement that you've earned to put on your CV. So it's a personal choice. It's something, so in order to be eligible to sit for the exam, you need to have a master's degree of any kind, and some amount of archival experience. So if you have 9 credits of archival coursework, then you only need 1 year of archival experience. If you have not taken archival coursework, then you need 2 years of archival experience in order to be eligible. And they have a new provisional option. So you can graduate with your archival coursework, sit for the exam, and then take a year or two to get your professional experience. But so the exam itself is 100 questions. It's multiple choice, and it covers the spectrum of archival knowledge. So the idea is that, much like other certification programs, you're showing your knowledge in the archival field. So arrangement and description, preservation, ethics, legal matters, appraisal, reference and outreach, management. So kind of the broad spectrum. So I wouldn't say it's necessary. I think it's certainly something to consider. I'm a certified archivist. Cliff and Ryan, are you? Ryan is. Cliff is not. Dr. Eppard would be very proud of him.
I do what I can. You know, and I'll just add that, so Ashley knows what she's talking about. She teaches the prep course in the program, in the SLIM program. Ryan also knows what he's talking about. He's been teaching a prep course for NAGARA, which is a government records national organization. He's been doing that for a few years. So they both know what they're talking about with the certified archivist exam. I have decided not to do it over the years. I've debated at times, but for me, I haven't seen a cost benefit for it. And so I've decided not to do it. But a lot of people that I work with have gone ahead and received that certification as well as they've gone through things. So it can be beneficial because it does open up some other opportunities. It can be, like, a lot of times you'll see it as a potential preferred qualification if it isn't required. And so that can help in candidacy for other positions.
Yeah, I'll just throw in my 2 cents here. I think it helped me a lot. I think, and Cliff could probably, I don't know if he can legally answer this question, but no, if it got me a leg up on the competition for my current position. But essentially, I feel like it did open doors for me, and not at a huge cost either. But it was because I also paired it very closely to my Emporia studies. And so really, I approached it as rounding out kind of other areas that I didn't have either the time or ability to take. Like Ashley mentioned, the legal side. I had very little experience on kind of the legalities of or ethical concerns legally about bringing in a collection or how you manage that collection. So having those readings that I just interlibrary loaned them, I didn't even buy them myself. I just read through them and it rounded out those areas that I was a little rougher on. And I do think it helped me through that process. And I'll just take this time, this isn't cheap, but I did want to just throw that out there as another option as well. But the DAS certification that's through the Society of American Archivists focuses on digital archives. And they have some really good classes. You don't even necessarily need to do the whole certificate because a 2-year time window is kind of tight. But if you just want a one-off, like I want to know more about email, you can do a one-off class on email or other areas that, again, if you just need rounding out of some other areas, that's another avenue. I'm happy to talk because I also have a DAS certification. So I'm happy to talk about either the CA or the DAS offline.
So anybody else have okay, all right, Daly, good job. Good job.
So it sounds like you guys have kind of different backgrounds and maybe worked in different archives. What would you guys say is the most challenging aspect, either for the institution you work for, or maybe an aspect of the position? Maybe like you're saying, the legality, like that kind of scares me, the legal stuff regarding it. Maybe the digital side of it. I'm just kind of curious what you guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in here because one of the major challenges here, and you'll probably find this as well, depending on the organization that you go to, you may have resistance in people wanting to work with you. They're wearing 30 different hats. This is 1% of their job is to make sure that this stuff gets to the archives. And so, you're always knocking on doors, at least from my experience, trying to get in my foot in the door to talk to people to say, hey, think about where your stuff ends up. Maybe you want your legacy to continue past the point of your death. And just maybe that greases some wheels. And then the other area here is digital. I'm working right now on how do we capture email, because now, very few people are writing letters between themselves at work. And so now capturing email, but we all know also that there's some people, probably WUSOB, getting, 5,000 emails a day. And, maybe it's junk, maybe it's good stuff. So how do you sort through that in a quick way where we're getting terabytes worth of email? How is a researcher going to be able to dig through that? How do we make sure that no private information gets leaked out when you say, here's 20 terabytes worth of emails, have fun? And so I find that stuff really interesting and really challenging. And that's kind of what I've really kind of latched onto. So I enjoy that challenge. But it's also a little scary that you have stuff disappearing constantly that should be in the archives that aren't getting there because people just don't think about it.
All right. I will second the digital material question. I think there's definitely, well, okay, so I'll step back a little bit and say, I think the fact that oftentimes the material that we're dealing with, right, like digital material and email, and the idea that they're terabytes full of photographs or videos or email or whatever the case might be, social media content, that technically, it might fall to us to maintain in some respect. But again, right, how do you make those decisions and what proportion? To try and communicate some of those things to upper administration. Because in many cases, the question of which email to save is not necessarily a sexy question. It's not particularly appealing, and it could be incredibly costly, right? To think about how you're going to maintain 20 terabytes of email from just say one dean or VP. And if you have multiple colleges and levels of administration, right? How are you going to maintain that? And how are you going to maintain a preservation copy as well as an access copy and all of the metadata that goes along with digital preservation, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you convince your dean that it's a really great idea to spend thousands of dollars to collect the material from the rest of campus and to perhaps help them see why they need to advocate with you for there to be a university-wide system focused on archives and records management. So I definitely think communication, advocacy, kind of where we're moving into a digital space are all big challenges. And donor relations, I would say, is also another huge challenge. Navigating personalities, navigating expectations. We're working with a donor currently who very kindly donated her father's World War II letters, right? Because we collect World War II. No pottery yet. But she wanted everything digitized. So that's not something we typically do. But we said, okay, fine, we'll digitize everything. Then she wanted everything transcribed. I mean, have you read the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? So even though these things weren't in the agreement, because she looped the university's development office in, and the development office thought, oh, this could be a potential gift. We need to woo her. It became a much larger cookie, right, than we originally had thought. And so now we're kind of 16 courses down and she's still hungry. And so how do you navigate that? How do you convince the rest of the university that no matter how large a potential gift somebody could be giving, there's just a limit to what a small department with other responsibilities can do. So yeah, I'd say advocacy and communication end up being big challenges.
I'll piggyback as I was thinking about the question and Ryan and Ashley were answering. I mean, I agree with what they've talked about, because in my mind, the main challenges come down to the stuff, the collections, the potential collections, that side of things, and the people. And those people can be people you work with on a day-to-day basis. They can be the donors, they can be administrators, they can be the researchers, all these different levels of people that you have to interact with. And Ashley just gave a great example of the types of challenges that you face with people sometimes. Some people can be rather demanding, they can be difficult to work with. And so you have to have the ability to have the skills to develop how to interact with those folks in ways that can get to a beneficial end. And on the collection side, Brian identified, and Ashley talked about it as well, the whole born digital side of the world that we're living in. We haven't talked a lot about web archiving, but that's another component. When you think about people do a lot of their communication and interaction on a web-based environment, whether it's through social media or other settings. And so how do we preserve that form of documentation that used to be done in different formats, postcards or letters back and forth to people or other forms like that? That's not today's norm. Today's norm is a different environment. And so those are challenges, but they can be exciting challenges, kind of like Ryan was saying, that that can get us really interested in, okay, how do we take these theories and these ideas that have existed for hundreds of years over various formats and apply them in this new environment of digital, where a lot of times people think, okay, I'm going to wear my digitization hat for a second. A lot of times people will think, well, you just digitize it and it's saved forever. I've scanned it, therefore it's good. I don't need to worry about it ever again. I'm not sure if any of you have ever seen digital files fail, but that happens. They go corrupt. And so if you're digitizing something, there's still a cost associated with long-term preservation. So thinking about those aspects can be pretty fun. And then, like Ashley mentioned, there's the advocacy side of how do you get the resources to do these types of activities and ensure the longevity of this work that matters if we're going to provide. I think Gerald Ham, an earlier archivist who talked about appraisal and archives in general, talked about it as basically holding up a mirror to society. That's kind of the purpose of archives. And so what type of mirror are we going to hold up? Is it just going to be the shards of a broken mirror, or is it going to be something that's a little bit more complete? So those are fun things to think about.
The advisors, Kathy, Jenny, Rebecca, Becca, do you have any kind of frequently asked questions from your students about archives?
I deal with all the inquiries in SLAM info, and most of the people who are interested in our program, they ask about what's the difference between the archive, the concentration, and the certificate. And I know Kathy say that a lot. They both start with C's, so it may get people confused, but they do have quite a difference. So I'll let Kathy say, explain the difference.
Well, a lot of students come in and do the concentration, which it's the 9 credits. Then if you add 9 more credits, you can get a certificate. Now the certificate is not a degree. So some people think, well, I'll just do the certificate, not the MLS, which is fine. You can do that, but it isn't a degree. And I always tell students, just go and look at the jobs you're looking for. And if it asks for an MLS or a master's of some sort, then that's probably what you need. If it just asks for a certificate, that is also fine. I think one question my students ask a lot, because we have a lot of students interested in archives. They ask about the job market, like, is it saturated? Are there too many people in love with archives? And I understand that because I'm a history major too. And so I think that is probably a question that, you know, I don't know. That's probably my biggest question, or my most repeated question. It's just the job market. Becca, you're muted.
I would second that job market question, that people ask about the job market and how to make themselves stand out in the job market.
Yes.
Ashley, you want to start on that one, or you want one of us to?
I can start. So I would say it's depending on your flexibility. So if you are open to going anywhere in the country, then there's a fair amount of flexibility. I mean, so I usually look at Archives Gig as a good resource for job postings. And it's a blog that is volunteer run, but it's so well established within the field at this point that people from all over the country in many different aspects of archival work will now send postings to the blog. So just looking, scanning the entry-level jobs, the mid-level jobs, the advanced level jobs, particularly with the pandemic opening up, or the job market after the pandemic opening up, there's been a lot of jobs posted. And I think there's been this precipice that the field has, been hovering on for the last number of years, waiting for a whole bunch of people to retire. And it is coming, right? I mean, people will have to retire. So I think that there is opportunity as long as there is that flexibility. And I would say, so the last time we hired an archives person, it was a faculty position, and we did not receive a lot of applications. I mean, and that's been consistent. I would say Towson has hired maybe 5 people in the last 9 months. And we have many job openings coming because we are moving to R2 status. And so they're providing the library, thankfully, with a lot of new positions. But we have only averaged 25 to 30 applicants. So there's a lot of opportunity if you throw your hat in the ring. So, if you say, okay, well, I meet 3/4 of these qualifications, but I don't have teaching experience, or maybe I don't have preservation experience, or, whatever the qualification might be, apply anyway. Because if you have written a really strong cover letter and you have, say, strong coursework, or you've, worked in an allied field, and you can show how the skills you're bringing from the education field, or customer service, or technology, or the library side of things, if you can show how those skills will translate into the archives, then you're a strong candidate. So it's about crafting how you present yourself. And there are a lot of opportunities for mentoring and career counseling through SAA and through regional organizations that can help you craft that image of yourself.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was one of the people that I really had to really grind to get my foot in the door. I volunteered at the public library in Kansas City. I volunteered time in an archives and special collections. And when I started working through the Emporia stuff, I kind of flipped that in the interview to say, hey, I'm working towards my degree. And that got me a foot in the door as well. And also, anything that makes you unique, I had a master's in history, and I talked about my research in witchcraft. And so people were like, oh, you studied Scottish witches? That got them interested more to talk to me, and it kind of helped me be remembered in their minds. And so that's how I got my job at the Kansas Historical Society, was also, playing up, hey, I have a teaching background. I'm happy to do training and do all these different things that it was kind of a hot potato. No one wanted to do that at the Historical Society. So I was happy to fill that need, that role, just through the interview process, kind of asking those questions and saying, this is my skill set. And then the other area, and this may be more for academic jobs, but presenting and being active in organizations is huge. I think through my network building in MAC is the regional, the Midwest Archives Conference. I made connections there. They knew people that knew people. I met Cliff through that. And so that's one way to just show that you're showing up, you're staying current. And when I look at people's resumes, that's kind of the first section I go to is what have you been doing? Have you given a poster? Have you given a talk? If it's an academic position, have you published anything? I just want to make sure that you're current. You're not just sitting back for 5 years and then thinking you're going to walk in and get a job. It's not going to be that easy. It's very competitive.
Yeah, I think I agree with what's been said so far, and I think the only additions I would contribute would be, well, I'll fully second what Ashley said in terms of if you look at the job qualifications and you go, oh, I've only got all but 1 or 2 of them, I am not qualified. Just throw your hat in the ring. I mean, it may be soul crushing to get all those rejection letters. I understand, I've been down that path before. But one will work out where, yeah, this is the right fit. This is the right situation. I'm excited about it. It will work out. And it may be one of those jobs where you don't have all the qualifications, but it worked out because, yeah, you were the right candidate for that position. So I'd agree with that. And then also I think Kathy had mentioned the certification component. Sometimes there's some confusion where people think that the certification through the SLIM program is the same as being a certified archivist, and those are 2 different things. So if a job is requiring a certification from the Academy of Certified Archivists, you would want to make sure you've got that versus the SLIM program certification, because that can cause some confusion for some students. So, and then I think in terms of other aspects of the interview process, I really also would second what Ashley said about mentoring opportunities that exist, as well as having a network of people that you can rely on to give you legitimate feedback about, does my resume look decent? Is this cover letter decent? Can I do some mock interviews to test how I'm answering questions and what types of questions might come to me? All of those efforts will really help prepare you for the job interview process. Ryan had mentioned some internships and volunteering that he did. There are a number of internship programs, some that are paid, hopefully more than not, that's my hope, that can get you some really good experience. I was able to do an internship the summer before I started grad school, and it was at the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And as you can imagine, just by saying that, and I see some of you are like, oh, okay, that opened a lot of opportunities for job interviews. Now, granted, half the time it was a guy who was like, dude, let's talk baseball. And I was like, gee, thanks, but I want to get a job, So, but sometimes that name recognition can get those opportunities opened up for you. So if you look at potential, internships or other work that you can do in places that have name recognition, that can help your candidacy for other positions in the future. So.
Thank you so much for your all kinds of thoughtful answers and suggestions. Any last question?
I have one question left. So I'm planning on taking, this is for Ashley. I'm planning on taking the bibliographic and research methods and archives in the fall. I was just kind of curious what that class entails. Just like a brief summary of it, I guess.
Yeah, so that is looking at how archivists can understand the materials that they're caring for and how they can understand them from a research perspective. So we typically look at different formats of materials. So, maps versus oral histories versus photographs, and how they all relate to the larger conceptual ideas of history and memory and kind of collective history, right? And how we interact with them from a research perspective.
So that's not part of the concentration, but it's part of the certificate. We have to have 8 grade hours under archive studies. That's why we have other classes such as such class. Well, anyway, I think, but can you clarify question clear for Ashley?
You're kind of cutting out, Lusab.
Sorry, I mean, on the chat, Madison asked.
Now I can hear you.
So internship opportunities. ALA is a good place, SAA. I think that there are internships also listed on ArchivesGig, and you might be able to filter them. She adds tags to all of the posts, so you might be able to filter them by internship. But NARA also does internships. MAC might have more local to the Midwest region. MARAC, the Mid-Atlantic Archives Conference, is on the East Coast. There's a Northwest Archives group as well. I don't know if anybody's in the Southwest, but there's a Southwest Archives organization. So just kind of poking around. If you haven't joined, I believe you can join SAA's general list, email list, without becoming a member. So that's another great place to find postings.
Yeah, and if you're around the Kansas City area, the Kansas City area archivists often has internships that they do there. And personally for me, I knew that there was a special collections in the Kansas City Public Library, and I just kind of cold called them. I sent them an email and said, hey, is this possible? And they said, yeah, we haven't done it for a few years, but yeah, let's work something out. It was unpaid, but it was still experience that I was getting there.
I did the same thing at Vassar College. I just emailed, and quite often, because we have a backlog, right, which we talked about, many archives are ecstatic to have assistance.
I don't know, everybody knows this, but I'm the interim dean of the libraries, ESU libraries and archives. So we need your help. So if you need experiences, I'm more than happy to have you. We may have some fund to pay. But that's kind of, my kind of plan, long-term plan to facilitate or help the students to have opportunities of practicum. Sometimes, kind of shy, kind of difficult to knock the doors all the time, or kind of geographical kind of strengths, or, whatever reasons, then, maybe you may feel comfortable at your home, the ESU libraries or archives, so you can have kind of comfortable experience without any kind of extreme pressure. So that is on my list, as the interim dean of the library / archives But you know, Ryan's and Ashley were brave, you know, to knock the door, you know. But you know, please try. You know, who knows? You know, I mean, they need you know, more manpower, is limited the budget all the time, and then you may or may not like those you know, daily stuff. You know, you may not have like a 500-year-old, you know, a paper. So you may be disappointed, but you know, that's great experience, and you can kind of you know, reflect or rethinking your future. But I believe in most cases you will have great experiences, real you know, real life experience at archives, and there are many one woman, one man, the archives in many places, small colleges, you know, small, you know, kind of town historical society. Maybe there's nobody there, kind of stuff there. So you know, try your best. Okay, I'm not sure you hear this kind of hail. It's pouring right now. So anything else?
I had
okay, go ahead.
Quick question. You are on a semester basis for the program? It's not, it's like 2 semesters for the year. Is that correct?
No, we have 3 semesters. We have summer, spring, and fall.
So almost every student is taking 2 classes a semester, including summer. That's how they finish their degrees, 36-hour credit hours in 2 years.
And we always offer several archives classes every semester. I think we have 6 this summer.
Yeah, summer is all elective classes. All right, so thank you very much, everybody, and our great instructors. So you will have either or all of them in your summer classes. I hope you enjoy those classes. They are fantastic instructors. I've been here about 6 years, and I have enough data to, you know, convince me they are excellent. And then they are experts in their you know, job and, you know, knowledge. So I bet you will like those classes. Okay, thank you very much.
And if you have further questions, feel free to contact any of us individually. We'd all be happy to help further.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for all your time tonight.
Thank you.